The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with stars that burned like tiny lamps across the dark sea of space. Among those stars, civilizations rose and fell, each carrying their own stories of survival. Some were mighty empires, others fragile colonies, and some stood on the very edge of ruin. One such people were the Threxians. They were tall, scaled beings with proud crests on their heads, known for their long history of strength and artistry. Once, the Threxian Confederacy had been a power of its own, ruling several sectors with firm hands and honorable traditions. But now their story was a different one. War had scarred them. The Scarn Hive, insectoid conquerors from the Outer Rim, had fallen upon the Threxians with merciless hunger. The Hive never negotiated, never sought peace. They consumed worlds like fire consumes forests. The Threxians had resisted bravely, but their fleets were shattered, their colonies burned, and their people starved. The council chambers of the surviving Threxian world were filled with voices of despair. Leaders argued, scientists wept over failing medicine, and generals admitted that their armies could no longer hold against another assault. At last, their prime voice, an elder with silvered scales, gave the command that many considered shameful but necessary: send the call, ask for aid. And so, the beacon was sent. The call for help, the distress beacon pulsed through subspace, carried across the networks that bound the great galactic council of species together. The message was simple and filled with desperation. We are broken. We require medical aid, supplies, healers, and food. The Threxian Confederacy humbly requests assistance. To any who still believe in mercy, help us. The beacon was not ignored. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, where dozens of species gathered in floating chambers of light, the message was replayed. Ambassadors watched in silence as the Threxian prime voice begged for help. The Dreelan, winged beings with delicate feathers, lowered their heads in sympathy. The Rovak, slow and stone-skinned, murmured in their deep voices that the Threxians had fought bravely. But there was hesitation. Sending aid meant sending resources, and resources meant risk. None wished to draw the wrath of the Scarn Hive, who still lurked beyond the borders. Amid the whispering and cautious debates, one name was spoken. A young race not long admitted to the council, a species often underestimated but known for their strange boldness. Humans. They are reckless, one alien muttered. They are unpredictable, another said. But, added a third, they never ignore a call for help. The council decided. A message was sent to Earth. Humanity responds on Earth. The distress call reached the Terran Union Command. In a room filled with screens, charts, and the quiet hum of advanced machinery, leaders listened. They heard the desperation in the Threxian voice. Some suggested sending small medical ships, perhaps a convoy of healers and food. That would be the normal choice. But humans rarely did only what was normal. Admiral Elena Vera, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, stood with arms crossed as the council debated. Her voice cut through the air like steel. They asked for aid. Aid is not only medicine. Aid is safety. We will not patch their wounds only for the Scarn to cut them open again. If we go prepared, some hesitated. The Scarn Hive was no small enemy. Sending more than aid meant sending war. But on Earth, the memory of old human wars still burned in history books and stories. Humanity understood suffering, understood the cruelty of being attacked when weak, and so, with fierce unity, they chose their path. The Terran Union prepared not just hospital ships, but carriers, destroyers, and cruisers. The largest fleet since Earth had joined the galactic stage began to move. When news of this spread through council channels, whispers filled the galaxy. Humans are overreacting. Humans always bring soldiers where none are needed. Humans will frighten the Threxians instead of helping them. But the humans did not argue. They did not defend their choice. Quietly, steadily, they armed themselves and set sail among the stars. The waiting Threxians on the broken Threxian homeworld of Varith, life was a shadow of what it had been. Cities lay in ruins. Fields were burned. Families huddled in shelters waiting for medicine that was scarce and food that was almost gone. The survivors gathered on the cliffs overlooking their starport, watching the skies with hollow eyes. Their leaders had told them help was coming. They will send hospital ships, whispered one mother to her child. Doctors, said another. Medicines, clean water, warm food. Their faith rested on fragile hope. In the great council chamber of Varith, The Threxian prime voice stood surrounded by generals. His scales were pale with age, but his eyes still burned with dignity. "They are young, these humans," one general said with doubt. "They may not come in strength." "Even a single freighter of medicine will help us," the prime voice replied softly. "We must not demand too much. We have fallen far already." The chamber fell silent as they waited for the moment when the skies would blaze with incoming ships. The first shadows in the sky days passed. Then the stars shifted. The first ripple of FTL signatures appeared in the system. Threxians rushed to the starport. Children clung to their mothers. Elders leaned on staffs, and warriors stood in rigid rows waiting for the aid ships to appear. "Look, there," someone shouted, pointing upward. From the deep of space, vessels emerged. At first the crowd cheered, white gleams in the distance, the promise of salvation. But then the cheers grew quiet. The ships were not slender hospital frigates. They were not gentle freighters with painted symbols of aid. They were vast armored giants of steel. Hulls black and silver bristling with weapon mounts. Engines glowed like fire as one after another arrived. Carriers the size of floating cities. Destroyers with long, narrow frames like blades. Cruisers with rows of cannons visible even from the surface. The sky filled with warships. The Threxians stood in silence. Some gasped. Some stepped back in fear. The youngest children hid behind their parents. This cannot be aid," whispered a Threxian healer. "This is an invasion fleet." Confusion and doubt. The prime voice himself walked to the balcony of the council tower, gazing upward. His old hands gripped the rail. For a moment even he could not find words. The generals muttered angrily, "Have the humans come to finish us? Do they insult us, bringing weapons when we asked for doctors? Perhaps they intend to claim our world for themselves." Fear spread quickly among the people. Whispers became shouts. But then through the comm channels a voice rang out. "Calm, clear, human. This is Admiral Elena Vera of the Terran Union Fleet. We come in answer to your call. We bring aid, protection, and supplies. Do not be afraid. We stand with you." The words carried across the world, broadcast to every settlement, every gathering. The tone was firm, not mocking, not hostile. But still many Threxians stared at the sky, uncertain. What kind of aid arrived behind walls of steel and guns that shone like lightning? End of part. The Threxians had asked for help. They had expected medicine, bandages, and gentle hands. Instead, the humans had brought an armada. And as the warships settled into orbit, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what humanity truly meant when they said the word aid. The skies of the Threxian homeworld still burned with the glow of engines. Human ships hung above the planet like steel guardians, their massive hulls blocking out stars. The Threxian people, who had waited with hope for doctors and food, stood frozen with disbelief. No one had expected this. At the ruined starport, families clutched each other as they looked upward. Children pointed at the long black silhouettes of cruisers and destroyers. Their parents hushed them, unsure if speaking too loudly would bring danger. "What kind of aid is this?" whispered a farmer, his voice trembling. "They promised help," answered a healer beside him. "But this is an army." For many Threxians, fear replaced hope. They had called for medicine, not war. They had asked for healers, not soldiers. The prime voices doubt inside the grand council tower. The Threxian prime voice stood at the balcony, his silvered scales catching the faint light of dawn. His generals crowded behind him, their eyes sharp with suspicion. "Look at them," one general growled. "Those ships carry more cannons than all our fleets had at their height." "They circle our world like hunters," another said. "Humans do not bring medicine. They bring conquest." The prime voice raised his hand, silencing the arguments. He was old, his body worn from years of service, but his spirit remained unbroken. He studied the human fleet carefully. The ships did not move like predators. They moved with order, with purpose, falling into patterns that formed protective arcs around the planet. Still, the doubt gnawed at him. Why had the humans come with so much firepower when only healing was asked? The first transmission A signal pulsed across the Threxian networks. Screens lit up. Radios crackled. And then the voice of Admiral Elena Vera spoke once more. "People of Threxia," she began, her voice calm and steady. "We come not as conquerors, but as allies. You asked for aid and we bring it. Medicine and supplies will be delivered shortly. But we also bring defense, for aid without safety is only a temporary comfort. Know this. While the Terran fleet stands here, no enemy will harm you." The words echoed across cities and shelters. Many Threxians listened in silence. Some felt comfort, others only felt unease. One young Threxian soldier whispered to his commander, "Do they think us so weak that we cannot defend ourselves?" The commander, a scarred veteran, shook his head slowly. "No, I think they know the hive will come again, and they mean to be ready." The landing of the first shuttles hours later, small craft broke away from the massive carriers. They were human shuttles painted white with blue markings. They descended gently into the ruined starport, landing on cracked stone where once proud banners of Threxia had flown. The crowd tensed. Warriors gripped their weapons, unsure whether to prepare for battle or welcome guests. The shuttles opened with a hiss of steam. Humans stepped out. They were shorter than the Threxians, smaller and softer in appearance, but there was strength in their stance. They wore armor but not with weapons drawn. Instead, they carried crates marked with red symbols of healing. Behind them came doctors in white suits scanning the air, carrying medkits, and calling out in voices filled with concern. One human woman, her face half hidden by a mask, knelt before a Threxian child who was coughing weakly. She placed a small device near the child's chest, and with a soft hum, the device began to heal. The mother gasped as the child's breathing eased. The silence broke. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Hope flickered again. "They bring medicine," someone whispered. "They came to help after all." But still, above them, the warships waited like watchful eyes. Generals in conflict inside the council chamber, debate raged. The Threxian generals pounded their fists against the stone table. "They insult us." Aid behind a wall of weapons. "Do they think we are children?" "They mean to stay," another accused. "Mark my words. These humans will not leave once they taste our soil." But not all agreed. A younger strategist, her scales a bright copper, spoke with a different view. "We cannot ignore what we have seen. Their medicine works. Their doctors heal our wounded without asking for tribute. Perhaps the weapons are for protection, not control." The Prime voice listened. His heart told him the humans were not here to enslave. But he also knew that fear spreads faster than trust. A meeting with the humans. The decision was made. A delegation of Threxian leaders would meet the human admiral face to face. The humans arranged the meeting aboard their flagship, the TNS Resolute. The Threxian Prime voice, guarded by two generals, was carried up in a transport. Many on the surface watched the shuttle rise, wondering if their leader would ever return. When they entered the human ship, they were struck by its order and power. The halls were wide, filled with officers who moved quickly, their faces calm but focused. No one pointed weapons at them. No one treated them as prisoners. In the command chamber, Admiral Vera stood waiting. She was tall for a human, her dark hair tied back, her uniform sharp. When the Threxians entered, she bowed her head, not in submission but in respect. "Prime voice," she said warmly. "You honor us with your presence." The Prime voice studied her carefully. "You came with weapons when we asked for healers. Why?" Admiral Vera's gaze was steady. "Because healers cannot save you from what hunts you. We know the Scarnhive. They will return. They always return. If we only gave you medicine, your wounds would be opened again within weeks. So we brought more. We brought protection." Her words carried no arrogance, only certainty. One of the Threxian generals hissed, "And if your protection becomes a cage?" Admiral Vera looked at him directly. "Then you may cast us out. But until then, no enemy will touch your world while a Terran warship stands above it." The chamber fell silent. Even the Threxian generals found no quick reply. The people's reaction back on the surface, word of the meeting spread quickly. Some rejoiced. "The humans are true allies. They fight for us." Others still doubted. "Or they fight to claim us." The markets, though broken, buzzed with talk. In shelters, families spoke in whispers about the strange humans. In hospitals, wounded soldiers who were treated by human medics swore they felt strength returning faster than ever. Yet always, in every conversation, eyes would drift toward the sky, where the human warships floated silently, guarding but also reminding the people of their power. The Scarnhive watches far beyond the system. In the dark corners of space, the Scarnhive stirred. Scouts reported the arrival of the human fleet. The hive minds, vast and cold, considered their options. The Threxians had been expected to fall quietly, another easy feast. But now the humans had come, bringing steel and fire. The hive whispered in countless voices. Test them. Strike again. See what these humans truly are. The future battle began to take shape, unseen by the Threxians but already felt by Admiral Vera, who tightened her fleet's formation as if she could sense the danger on the windless void of space. End of Part 2. The Threxians had seen the first steps of human aid. Medicine had arrived, doctors worked in the ruins, and the Prime Voice had spoken face-to-face with the human admiral. Yet doubt still lingered mixed with hope. Above their world, the Terran fleet held its silent vigil, and somewhere in the cold darkness, the Skarn hive began to move. The orbit of Varith was filled with human warships. To the Threxians, it looked as if their broken world had suddenly gained a shield of steel and fire. The sight was both comforting and frightening. On the ground, human doctors worked among the ruins. Their medicine healed wounds faster than Threxian remedies, and their machines purified water that had been poisoned since the first hive bombardments. Children laughed again for the first time in months, playing near the white tents the humans had raised. Yet the question remained. Why had the humans brought so many ships? The Prime Voice's worries in his private chamber. The Prime Voice sat with his council. The old leader rubbed the ridges of his crest thoughtfully. They heal our wounded, he said. Yet above us their weapons remain ready. I do not understand them. General Serac, his most loyal warrior, growled softly. Because they are humans. They fight when others would speak. They prepare when others would wait. Perhaps they do not know the meaning of restraint. But the young strategist, the copper-scaled Lyras, leaned forward. Her voice was steady. No, General. They know restraint. Look carefully. Have their warships fired upon us? Have their soldiers marched into our cities? They remain only where they are needed. I think they are waiting not for us, but for the enemy. The Prime Voice studied her words. There was wisdom in them, and yet the unease in his heart did not leave. Human defenses, the humans did not sit idle. From orbit, vast machines descended. They were drones, shimmering spheres with wings of steel, that hummed as they lowered turrets and shield projectors onto the ground. Around the main starport, new walls of metal rose. At first, the Threxians thought the humans meant to build prisons. But soon it became clear. These were defenses. Human engineers worked side by side with Threxian workers, teaching them to operate simple controls. One alien farmer, once too weak to lift stones, found himself standing beside a human technician as they installed energy shields above a water reservoir. You protect water? The farmer asked, confused. The human nodded. The Skarn will strike the weak points first. We guard them all. Everywhere the humans went, they left structures of defense, bunkers, watchtowers, sensor stations. To the Threxians, it seemed excessive, even strange. But the humans explained in simple words, aid means safety. Without safety, aid is only borrowed time. Tension among the people. The common Threxians began to argue among themselves. In the ruined markets, one elder shook his head. The humans build too much. Soon our world will not be ours anymore. A younger mother replied, but my child breathes again because of their medicine. How can I not trust them? They shield our wells, our shelters, another added. Would we rather wait for the hive to burn us again? Hope and doubt clashed in every home. The Threxians had pride, and pride was not easy to set aside. A visit to the human ship to understand better. The Prime Voice requested another meeting with Admiral Vera. This time, he asked to see the heart of her flagship. She welcomed him aboard the TNS Resolute once more. The Prime Voice walked slowly through the human halls, his old eyes studying every detail. He noticed the humans saluted their admiral with discipline, but also spoke to her with respect, not fear. At last, she led him into a wide chamber filled with glowing maps of space. Red lights marked danger zones. Blue lights showed human ships moving in patterns of defense. This is your war room, the Prime Voice said. Vera nodded. Yes, here we watch for the hive. We know they are near, he frowned. How can you be certain? We see no ships, her gaze was sharp. Because predators return to the kill. Always, the Skarn do not forget. They will smell your weakness and come again. And when they do, we will be ready. The Prime Voice's heart was heavy. He wished her words were wrong. But deep inside, he knew she spoke the truth. Threxian generals protest back on the surface. Not all leaders were pleased. General Serac and several others gathered in secret, their voices hot with anger. These humans plant their machines on our soil, raise towers in our cities. Soon they will call themselves rulers. They claim to defend us, another spat, but they make us appear weak before the galaxy. We should send them away before they tighten their grip. But Lyris, the young strategist, overheard. She stepped forward, her copper scales shining in the dim light. Fools, she said softly. You would throw away protection because of pride? Did you not see the maps in their ship? Did you not hear their admiral? The hive is coming, and if the humans leave, we will not stand a day. The generals glared at her, but none spoke. Her words carried the sharpness of truth. The calm before the storm. For several days, the humans worked without rest. More hospitals rose, more food was distributed, and more defenses came online. Children no longer hid when human soldiers passed. Some even waved, and the soldiers smiled back. Healers from both races began to work together, sharing knowledge. Slowly, trust began to grow, though fear still lingered like a shadow. Above, the Terran fleet remained in constant motion. Every ship followed a precise path, always guarding, never drifting. Threxian eyes often turned upward, wondering if those great engines would one day leave, or if they were there forever. And in the silence of space, far away, something stirred. First signs of the hive, it began with whispers. Human long-range sensors caught faint signals, distorted bursts, strange shadows on the edge of detection. The hive was moving. Admiral Vera called her officers to the war room. Her voice was steady, though her eyes burned. They are coming, she said. Prepare the fleet. Tighten the shields around the planet. No Skarn ship touches Varith. Orders spread through the Terran ranks like fire. Engines roared, weapons came alive, and every pilot strapped into their seat. The Threxians watched in awe as the human fleet shifted into a massive wall of defense, a steel barrier stretching across the heavens. The Prime Voice learns the truth that night. Admiral Vera invited the Prime Voice once more to her command chamber. She showed him the incoming signals. Small but growing stronger. They are the Skarn, she said. The enemy you fear most. They will be here soon. The Prime Voice lowered his head. So you knew. All along you knew. Yes, Vera answered. That is why we came with warships. Because medicine heals bodies, but protection saves civilizations. Her words struck deep. The Prime Voice, who had doubted, now understood. The humans had not come to insult or to control. They had come because they knew what true aid required. He closed his eyes and whispered, May the stars be with you, Admiral. End of Part 3. The Threxians had seen the truth of human intent. The fleet was not here to conquer. It was here to shield. The Prime Voice now understood, though many of his people still doubted. But in the void beyond their system, the Skarn hive moved closer, their dark swarms hungering for another feast. The humans stood ready, and soon, the galaxy would see what aid meant when given by Earth. The skies above Varith had grown quiet, but it was not the peace of safety. It was the silence before a storm. Human sensors had already warned of movement at the edge of the system. Something vast, cold, and hungry was coming closer. The Skarn hive. They had tasted Threxian worlds before, tearing colonies apart and leaving only ashes. Now they returned, expecting to find the Confederacy still weak and broken. To the hive, the Threxians were prey, food for their endless swarm. But this time the prey was no longer alone. The hive approaches, in the darkness of space, the first Skarn ships appeared. Their vessels were not like human or Threxian ships. They looked alive, great shells of bone and metal fused together, glowing faintly with green light. They moved in swarms, dozens, then hundreds, wings spreading like locusts across the stars. Each Skarn ship was a weapon and a creature at once. Their hulls pulsed like beating hearts, and their weapons fired streams of plasma that hissed like venom. The Threxians who saw the first images trembled. Memories of fire and destruction filled their minds. They whispered to each other in fear. They have returned. They will burn us again. But when the news reached Admiral Vera, her voice remained calm. The enemy is here, she said. The fleet will hold the line. The human fleet prepares above Varith. The human fleet shifted into formation. Massive carriers opened their hangars, releasing waves of starfighters. Destroyers and cruisers locked their weapons into place, their long cannons glowing as power surged through them. Shield generators hummed with energy, creating a barrier around the planet. From the surface, the Threxians watched in awe as the black shapes of human ships lit the sky with blue fire. For the first time, they saw what it meant for humans to prepare for war, not with chaos, but with perfect, sharp discipline. Children cheered when they saw the fighters streak across the heavens. Elders whispered prayers. Warriors clenched their fists, ashamed they could not join, but grateful that someone stood for them. First contact. The swarm entered the system. At first it was only small groups testing the defenses. A few Skarn cruisers darted forward, their claws of plasma stabbing at the outer human patrols. But the humans were ready. The TNS Valiant, a Terran destroyer, opened fire first. Streams of brilliant light cut through the darkness, striking the Skarn ships with surgical precision. 2 enemy cruisers exploded, their broken shells drifting into space. Cheers erupted in human command decks, but no one celebrated for long. More signals appeared, hundreds more. The real swarm had arrived. The battle begins. The void between stars lit up as war erupted. Human fighters screamed forward, weaving through the swarm like silver arrows. They fired missiles and plasma cannons, tearing holes in the hive's smaller ships. Skarn interceptors answered, diving with insect-like movements, spitting venomous beams that shredded several fighters in seconds. The larger human ships opened fire next. Carriers launched barrage after barrage, while cruisers cut through the swarm with heavy cannons. Destroyers turned their agile bodies to flank, creating crossfire zones where Skarn ships were trapped and destroyed. But the hive was vast. For every Skarn ship that burned, 2 more emerged. They filled the space like a tide of shadows, rushing toward the planet. From the ground, the Threxians could see flashes of light in the sky. Explosions rippled like distant storms, brightening the night. Many fell to their knees, unable to look away. The shield holds as the first Skarn ships pushed through the human lines, their weapons turned downward. Beams of plasma streaked toward Varith's surface, but they struck not soil, not stone. They struck the human shields. Blue domes of light flared across the cities and starport. The energy barriers absorbed the Skarn fire, rippling but holding strong. The Threxians gasped as their homes, once so defenseless, now stood under a canopy of protection. Our world is safe, whispered one elder. For the first time in memory, the hive's attack did not bring instant destruction. Human strategy inside the war room of the Resolute. Admiral Vera stood tall, her eyes fixed on the map of the battle. Group Alpha, flank the swarm's left wing. Group Beta, form a shield wall near the planet. Carriers, continue fighter deployment. Do not let them through, her officers answered in unison. The Terran fleet moved like a single creature, every ship knowing its place, every pilot trusting the others. The Skarn fought like a flood, wild and endless. But humans fought like stone, unyielding and planned. The Threxian realization. In the council tower on Varith, the Prime Voice and his generals watched the battle through large view screens. The images of human ships fighting filled the chamber. One general who had once doubted whispered in awe, "They stand against hundreds. They do not fall back. They fight for us as if this world were their own." Another shook his head slowly. "They came with warships because they knew. They understood what we could not admit, that aid without defense is nothing." The Prime Voice's old eyes glistened with pride, though not for his own people. "We are witnessing something greater than protection. We are witnessing a promise kept, turning the tide hours past." The battle raged without pause. Human fighters fell, ships were damaged, but still the line held. Then at last Admiral Vera gave the command. "All ships converge on the hive carrier. Cut off the head." Deep within the swarm floated a massive Skarn flagship, larger than any other vessel. Its shell was jagged, its body glowing with sickly green veins. From it, the swarm received commands like a queen directing her brood. The human fleet shifted focus. Cruisers blasted a path open. Destroyers cut through escorts. Fighters swarmed around the great ship, striking at weak points. The Resolute itself moved forward, its cannons glowing brighter than a star. With a thunderous roar it fired. The Skarn flagship shuddered. Cracks spread across its hull. Another volley struck and the creature ship broke apart, exploding in a storm of light. The swarm faltered. Leaderless, their movements lost order. Human ships pressed the attack, cutting through the confused hive vessels with ruthless precision. Victory above Varith one by one. The Skarn ships were destroyed. Some tried to flee, but the Terran fleet hunted them down, refusing to leave a single predator alive. Finally, the skies cleared. Where once there had been a swarm of hundreds, now there was only debris drifting silently in space. On the ground, the Threxians erupted into cheers. Warriors shouted in joy, children danced, elders wept. For the first time in generations, the Hive had been defeated, not with retreat, but with total victory. The humans had stood, and the Hive had broken. Aftermath as silence returned to the system, the human fleet reorganized. Ships moved back into protective formation, scanning for survivors. Damaged vessels were repaired quickly, and fresh supplies were sent down to the surface. In the council tower, the Prime voice addressed his people. His voice was strong, carried by broadcast across every city and shelter. Today the Hive came for us, but today we did not fall. Not because of our strength, but because of the hands that reached out when we were broken. The humans came with ships of war, but they gave us more than weapons. They gave us hope. His words echoed through the ruined streets. Threxians everywhere raised their heads with pride and gratitude. The human view on the Resolute, Admiral Vera stood with her officers, watching the quiet stars. Another swarm destroyed, one officer said. Vera nodded slowly. Yes, but they will come again. They always do. That is why we must stay. Her officers understood. The war was not over, but Varith had been saved. Humanity had proven its promise that aid was not only healing, but the power to end the wound before it began. End of Part 4. The Skarn had returned, but the humans had stood unbroken. For the Threxians, the meaning of aid had forever changed. They had expected doctors and food. They had expected comfort for a short time. Instead, they had been given something far greater. They had been given warriors who fought as guardians, who turned the tide of despair into the light of victory. And in the silence after battle, the galaxy began to whisper a new truth. When humanity answers a call for aid, they bring not only healers. They bring fleets. They bring safety. They bring the end of fear. The battle was over. For the first time in many years, the skies above Varith were clear of enemy shadows. The broken world had survived another attack from the Hive, but unlike before, it had not survived in fear. It had survived because someone had stood in the fire with it. The Threxians had asked for aid. They had expected bandages, food, and kind words. Instead, they had received something they had not even dared to hope for. They had received warships, the morning after. When the first dawn came after the battle, the people of Varith walked into the light with new eyes. The ruins of their cities were still there, but now those ruins were guarded by shining shields and watchful human machines. The air smelled of smoke from battle, yet also of fresh water that the humans had purified. In the markets, Threxians spoke with excitement. They stood against hundreds. They did not run, not once. The humans fought as if our world was their own home. Children played near the human medical tents, no longer afraid of the strangers in white coats. Mothers carried food packets given freely by human soldiers. Elders whispered thanks in the old Threxian tongue, blessing the protectors who had saved them. The fear that had once filled the air was gone. In its place grew something rare for a people so wounded: hope. The Prime voice speaks in the Grand Council Tower. The Prime voice addressed his people through every screen and speaker across Varith. His silvered scales gleamed as he stood tall before the cameras. My people, he began, you know what has happened. The Hive came for us again, but this time we did not fall. This time we did not hide. We stood because others stood with us. His voice grew stronger as he lifted his hand toward the sky. Humans came when we called for help. They came not only with medicine but with shields. Not only with food but with fire. They came not to rule us but to guard us, and because of them we live. The words echoed through the ruined cities, stirring hearts. Warriors who had once cursed their weakness now saluted the skies. Families wept, but their tears were no longer of despair. They were of gratitude. The human admiral aboard the TNS Resolute, Admiral Elena Vera, watched the broadcasts with quiet eyes. She did not smile, though there was pride in her heart. For her, victory was not an end, but only one battle in a war that never seemed to stop. When her officers congratulated her, she answered simply, "The Hive will return one day. But until then, these people are safe. That is enough." To humans, duty was not about glory. It was about responsibility. The Council's reaction far away in the halls of the Galactic Council, The news of the battle spread like fire. Ambassadors gathered, speaking in urgent voices as reports confirmed what had happened. The Threxians had been saved. The hive had been destroyed. And the ones who had done it were the humans. The Draylen, feathered and cautious, muttered nervously. They sent warships instead of healers. That is not aid. It is interference. The Rovak, with their stone-like bodies, rumbled in deep voices. Interference? No, it is protection. They saw what we would not. They did what we feared to do. Others argued endlessly. Some claimed humans were reckless, dangerous, too quick to fight. Others whispered that perhaps this reckless courage was exactly what the galaxy needed. But in every chamber, one truth remained. Humanity had proven something no one could ignore. The Threxian change of heart days passed and the humans did not leave. They stayed in orbit, repairing defenses and delivering more supplies. But they did not take land. They did not demand tribute. They did not place their banners over Threxian cities. Instead, they helped rebuild. Human engineers worked with Threxian builders, teaching them how to repair energy shields. Human medics trained Threxian healers in new techniques. Human soldiers guarded the starports but allowed Threxian officers to stand beside them. General Serac, once a loud voice of suspicion, walked among the defenses and saw the truth with his own eyes. He watched a human soldier give his food ration to a hungry Threxian child without hesitation. He watched human workers patch a ruined bridge so villagers could cross again. At last, Serac admitted quietly to the Prime voice, "I was wrong. They are not here to conquer. They are here to keep their promise." The Prime voice simply nodded. Sometimes pride blinds us to the gift of others. The galaxy's whisper in the outer colonies, stories began to spread. Merchants carried news of what had happened on Vareth. Traders repeated the tale in markets across dozens of worlds. The story grew with each telling. The Threxians called for medicine. The humans came with fleets. The hive returned. And the humans stood like a wall of fire. No Skarn ship touched the world while human warships watched above it. Soon, across the galaxy, species that had once mocked humanity now spoke of them with caution and respect. The humans had shown not just kindness but strength, not just sympathy but action. They were no longer seen as a young race, eager and naive. They were seen as something else, something older civilizations had forgotten to be. They were seen as protectors. The human way, when asked why they had come with warships, human leaders answered simply, because true aid is not only medicine. True aid is safety. We do not heal the wound while leaving the knife in place. We remove the knife and we make sure it never cuts again. Some aliens shivered at the fierceness of those words. Others nodded with deep respect. The humans had a way unlike others. Where some offered only comfort, humans offered final solutions. Where some feared to risk their lives for strangers, humans leapt into battle without hesitation. It was reckless, yes, but it was also powerful. Bonds forged on Vareth, bonds began to form between human and Threxian. Soldiers shared stories around fires at night. Medics worked side by side, saving lives together. Children of both races played with each other, laughing without fear. The Threxians, once too proud to accept help, now began to see the humans not as intruders, but as brothers and sisters in survival. The Prime voice said it best when he spoke to Admiral Vera during a quiet walk near the starport ruins. "You have given us more than protection," he told her. "You have given us dignity. You reminded us that we are not alone." Admiral Vera answered softly, "And you have given us something too. You have shown us that even in ruin, pride can become strength again." A warning to the hive. The Skarn hive had lost this battle, but they were not gone. Across the galaxy, their brood still crawled and multiplied. But word of what had happened at Vareth reached even their dark minds. For the first time, the hive felt caution. They had expected a weak world, an easy feast. Instead, they had faced humans who fought with fire and did not break. The hive began to whisper of this new enemy. A species that did not only defend but destroyed. A species that turned prey into protected kin. The hive learned fear. A new name across the council, across colonies, across hidden corners of the galaxy. Humanity gained new names. Some called them shield bearers. Others called them the relentless. But one name rose above the rest, spoken with both respect and caution, the unexpected. Because when humans answered a call for help, no one knew what would come. Not only doctors, Not only food, but fleets, fire, protection, and a promise that no enemy would harm those under their watch. The final words and the day the humans finally held a farewell ceremony with the Threxians. The Prime voice stood before both peoples. His voice was carried across the galaxy in a broadcast that would be remembered for centuries. Once we thought aid meant only healing. Once we thought help meant only comfort. But humanity has taught us a greater truth. Aid means safety. Aid means standing in the fire for those who cannot. Aid means courage. He turned to Admiral Vera, who stood with her officers in silence. You came when we were broken. You gave more than we asked for. And for that, Threxia will never forget. The crowd roared in agreement. Above them, the human fleet shone in the sun, their steel hulls gleaming like guardians of light.